Water balance inside a muscle cell is not a passive phenomenon. It's actively regulated, tied to cell volume sensing mechanisms, and has direct consequences for how much force the muscle can produce, how quickly it recovers, and how efficiently it responds to training. Creatine supplementation changes intracellular water balance in a specific and well-characterized way. When you load creatine into your muscle cells, you increase the intracellular solute concentration. Osmosis, the movement of water across a membrane toward higher solute concentration, drives water into the cell from the interstitial fluid surrounding it. This water moves inside the cell, not outside it. The muscle fiber physically swells. This is cell volumisation. The magnitude of the water retention associated with creatine loading is typically 1 to 3 kilograms of total body water, distributed across the skeletal muscle tissue. This water is not interstitial or subcutaneous. It is not causing the soft, puffy appearance associated with systemic fluid retention. It's inside the muscle fibers, making them larger, denser, and structurally different. The physiological consequences of this intracellular water shift are not purely cosmetic. A well-hydrated muscle cell has different mechanical properties from a dehydrated one. The internal hydrostatic pressure of a swollen cell contributes to its stiffness and force-generating capacity. At the molecular level, the actin and myosin filaments that produce contraction are arranged within a cytoplasm whose viscosity and ion concentrations affect their interaction kinetics. Adequate intracellular water supports optimal cross-bridge cycling, the mechanical interaction between actin and myosin that produces force. Cell swelling also has direct effects on protein metabolism. Liver cells exposed to hypoosmotic stress, artificially swollen by low osmolarity solution, show rapid increases in protein synthesis and decreases in protein degradation in cell culture experiments. Muscle cells show analogous responses, though the magnitude and mechanistic details differ. The osmotic signal from swelling, transmitted through membrane stretch receptors and changes in ion concentrations, activates mTOR, the master regulator of protein synthesis, and stimulates the amino acid sensing pathways that feed into mTOR activation. This is why creatine doesn't need to directly stimulate testosterone or growth hormone to produce anabolic effects. The intracellular water shift is itself an anabolic signal. The cell interprets volumization as a sign of nutritional abundance and favorable conditions for growth. There's a clinical parallel that illustrates this point. In hospitalized patients receiving intravenous amino acid solutions, those given isoosmotic solutions maintain cell volume, while those given less carefully calibrated solutions undergo cell shrinkage. The patients whose cells maintain volume show better protein retention. The cell volume signal has independent effects on protein metabolism, separate from amino acid availability. Creatine's volumization effect operates on the same principle in a training context. The practical implication is that ensuring adequate hydration while supplementing creatine is not just about comfort or health, it's about optimizing the cellular environment in which the volumization benefit operates. Dehydrated muscles can't fully realize the intracellular water benefit of creatine supplementation because the systemic dehydration works against the osmotic gradient that drives water into cells. The intracellular water balance story has a direct relevance to injury risk that's rarely discussed in creatine content. Well-hydrated muscle cells are more mechanically resilient than dehydrated ones. The internal hydrostatic pressure of a fully volumized cell contributes to its resistance to eccentric force, the type of force most associated with muscle fiber disruption. Several studies have investigated whether creatine supplementation reduces injury incidence in athletes, with some evidence suggesting lower rates of muscle strain and connective tissue injury in supplemented versus unsupplemented athletes in contact sports. The mechanisms are multiple. Better energy supply reduces the fatigue-associated loss of protective reflexes, reduced ROS production limits fiber damage, and the mechanical properties of volumized cells may provide some resistance to acute disruption. The injury prevention evidence is not as strong or consistent as the performance and recovery evidence. It's harder to study because injury incidence requires large samples and long follow-up periods, But the biological rationale is sound, and several elite sports programs include creatine as part of their injury prevention protocols rather than purely as a performance tool.